The Helsinki Commission will come to order. I want to acknowledge Senator Blumenthal, Commission member who's with us. Appreciate him being here. Let me just point out that this is obviously a very busy time for the United States Senate, so some of our committees are meeting simultaneously, so members will be coming in and out, and I apologize to our distinguished guest that there will be an in and out flow of members of the United States Congress during this hearing. We are so honored to have a real hero with us today, Yolika Paievska, better known as Taira, her nickname, is well known to the people of Ukraine. Today's hearing is My Hell in Russian Captivity. We have seen from afar the atrocities that have been committed by Mr. Putin in Russia in the unprovoked attack on Ukraine. We've seen that from afar. But I must tell you, there is nothing like a firsthand explanation and experience for us to have a better understanding of the atrocities committed by Russia in this war in Ukraine. So as we saw the conflict unfold in Mariupol and saw the atrocities that are committed, we're going to have a chance now to see some firsthand footage of what happened in Mariupol by the person who took those videos. Taira was a volunteer medic to try to save lives, and she did save lives during this conflict. She was able to take certain videos that she smuggled out, that the Associated Press was able to put together. So by way of introduction, we will play a short video from the Associated Press based upon Taira's footage, which was smuggled out when the besieged city fell. And let me just caution everyone watching this video, for obvious reasons, contains horrifying images of the reality of Mr. Putin's war on Ukraine. So we will start with that video, and I'll then have the opportunity to introduce Taira formally.
For 2 weeks, Ukrainian medic Yulia Paievska, better known as Taira, witnessed the daily horrors of war. She recorded 256 gigabytes of video to show the world what was happening in Mariupol as the Russian invasion unfolded.
Это Taira, Юлия Паевская. На флешке, которую вам передали, информация по раненым за все время до сегодняшнего момента.
Taira asked the Associated Press to get her footage safely out of the besieged city. On March 16th, days after recording the selfie, Taira and her colleague disappeared.
2 недели войны. Блокадний Маріуполь.
Свій такий підрозділ ангели Тайри, які вже зараз знають у всій Україні, рятувала на полі бою і наших поранених.
Taira found her colleague as a medic after the Russian invasion of Crimea.
We're going to try to restart that.
Спокуха? Не, жива. Голову аккуратно.
For 2 weeks, Ukrainian medic Yulia Paievska, better known as Taira, witnessed the daily horrors of war.
На себя.
She recorded 256 gigabytes of video to show the world what was happening in Mariupol as the Russian invasion unfolded.
Это Taira, Юлия Паевская. На флешке, которую вам передали, информация по раненым за все время до сегодняшнего момента.
Taira asked the Associated Press to get her footage safely out of the besieged city. On March 16th, days after recording the selfie, Taira and her colleague disappeared.
2 недели войны. Блокадний Маріуполь.
Свій такий підрозділ ангели Тайри, які вже зараз знають у всій Україні. Рятувала на полі бою і наших поранених.
Taira found her calling as a medic after the Russian invasion of Crimea in 2014. As a member of the Ukrainian team for the Invictus Games, she was going to be featured in a documentary on inspirational figures. But when the first rockets landed, she quickly jumped into action and turned on her camera. Paramedic Sergei Chernobrivets worked closely with her.
Хоть трошки вам помогла.
Спасибо. Вы как тут держитесь?
Да нормально мы, что мы.
Она вот, как сказать, как настоящий медик, который аполитичен, и он оказывает помощь всем, кто этого нуждается, в этом нуждается.
It wasn't just soldiers. Hours of footage show Taira treating wounded children, including a brother and sister in the early days of the war.
Где болит солнышко? Ножки? Руку, 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 руку. Направление. Тихо, тихо. Ручка болит.
Despite all the efforts to save him, the damage is too much for the young boy and the battle-hardened medic. She returns to close the eyes of the boy whose parents were also killed.
Мальчик ушел. Мальчик умер. Девочку еще качаю. Может быть, выживет девочка.
Taira also treated Russian soldiers, despite reservations from her countrymen.
Что мы тебе плохого сделали, солнце? Ладно, командир.
In one of her last body cam recordings, Taira again is tending to Russian soldiers. She explains why.
Завози.
Ничего не болит. Он сам ходит? Да, куда его? Туда. Вставай сюда. Вставай нахуй, раз. Вставай, вставай нахуй. Пожалуйста, ты пидоров людей убиваешь, хоть детей нахуй, бросить сюда, пошли нахуй.
Спокойно, спокойно. Они не будут к нам такими добрыми.
Конечно нет. Да. Русских лечить будут?
Ну что, я не могу с ними ничего сделать. Они военнопленные.
On March 21st, a Russian TV network announced Taira's capture, saying she was part of a far-right militia and had tried to flee the city. No one has seen or heard from her since.
Сейчас. На фонаре, на фонаре.
The Ukrainian government credits Taira with saving hundreds of lives during her career.
Раз, два, три, оп!
Her family and friends say the video shows a woman dedicated to healing, not war.
It really is a privilege to welcome the indomitable Taira here with us today. For her exemplary courage, having served on the front lines of Ukraine since 2014, as well as her harrowing experiences in Mariupol, Taira is justly regarded as a national heroine in Ukraine. You're a person who volunteered to help, to deal with those caught in conflict, to provide medical assistance. You volunteered. She's a symbol of the Ukrainian resistance to Russia's brutal war and aggression. Her capture by the Russian forces in March gripped the whole Ukrainian society. A medic captured and subject to cruelty for trying to help, including the Russian soldiers. Taira will testify as to the deplorable conditions of her 3 months of captivity and her plight of those who remain unlawfully detained by Russian occupation forces. Taira's first-hand account will complement the testimony we heard on previous hearings in July of life in Ukraine's newly occupied territories regarding thousands of Ukrainians arbitrarily detained, interrogated, beaten, and tortured in so-called filtration camps, and the litany of Russian violations of international humanitarian law documented in the OSCE's Moscow Mechanism reports and other human rights reports. However, no report can adequately capture firsthand experience. And that's why we're so grateful that you're with us today. Before I turn to Dr. Hanna Hopko, who is also joining us for a more fulsome introduction of Taira, I would like to acknowledge that we have in our audience guests, Ukrainian parliamentarians, and from the NGOs that have worked in regards to these humanitarian efforts. We welcome all of our international guests that are with us today. I also want to acknowledge that Senator Shaheen, a member of the commission, is with us. I will now turn, and we are joined by the co-chair of the commission. I'm going to give him a chance to catch his breath for 1 second before I turn to him. Senator Shaheen, would you like to make any opening comments?
I would just like to thank you for appearing before the members of the commission today and for your heroic efforts in Ukraine. Thank you.
Congressman Cohen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate your calling this meeting, this important meeting, and I apologize for being a little late. I want to thank all the RADA members who are here, we had an opportunity to meet with 3 of the members last night in a very informative evening. And it's a privilege to host Ms. Paievska, who has done some amazing work and had some amazing experiences that she's going to share with us, which is really important, I think, for the world, but the American public as well, to learn and to hear firsthand what's going on in Ukraine. Your bravery during the Mariupol siege and war, battle, is commendable, courageous. Thank you. Salute you. I can't imagine what it would be to live like that. But you provided people life and aid. It was so important there was medical personnel to help those people, so you were an angel. Thank you. I look forward to the testimony today. What Russia has done in Ukraine needs to be known and it needs to be punished because it is inhumane, it's immoral, and it's been deadly, and it's been life-altering for too many people for no reason, but for the ambition and the misdirected and conceptualized thoughts of Vladimir Putin, who is somehow putting himself in the body of Peter the Great and astroplaning 3 centuries and eventual destiny to be lying up there next to Lenin. The sooner, the better. I thank Senator Cardin for calling the meeting. This commission will look after the situations in Ukraine over the years and be an eye that's important and a voice that's important for Congress and the American people. Slava Ukraine.
Thank you, Representative Cohen. The United States stands with Ukraine. We are with you so that Ukraine can win this conflict and maintain their total sovereignty, and the international community can hold those responsible for those atrocities accountable for their actions. Today's hearing is another part of that process for us to get the information so that we can not only help Ukraine maintain its sovereignty, but also hold those accountable for their atrocities. So I will now turn to Dr. Hanna Hopko, who needs little introduction, as she is well known to the Commission, one of the leaders of the Euromaidan during the Ukraine's Revolution of Dignity in 2014. Dr. Hopko subsequently served as an independent member of parliament in the Ukrainian parliament, where she chaired the Foreign Affairs Committee from 2014 to 2019. Since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, she established, together with other Ukrainian activists, the International Center for Ukrainian Victory, which advocates for Ukrainian interests internationally and supports civil society's efforts towards victory in Ukraine. Dr. Hopko, welcome back to our committee.
Dear Senator Cardin, dear Senator Wicker, dear Commission members, I'm honored to speak at such an important hearing when Ukrainian armed forces and Ukrainian people are defending the free world from the devastation caused by the Russian totalitarian regime that is going beyond Ukraine's borders. I visited Helsinki Commission in April wearing a T-shirt with the photo of Yulia Paievska and a written appeal, Free Taira. By doing so, I was advocating for the release of Yulia and Ukrainian civilian defenders. I still can't believe that Yulia is testifying in the front of you today. Just 2 weeks ago, Yulia was back from Orlando Warriors Games, where she won 3 medals, 2 gold and 1 bronze. Just 2 months after she was released from the captivity. What an unbreakable spirit. I'm so proud that Yulia is here today. From the beginning of Russian invasion in 2014, Yulia rescued 700 people, trained first medical aid around 10,000. Yulia's mission is to save lives. Ukraine's mission is to defeat totalitarian colonialism, defeat prison of nations. Moscow's clear objective is to destroy the Ukrainian nation as a viable political entity through the war of obliteration. Russia wants to break the Ukrainian nation the same way Stalin did with the Holodomor, as genocide against Ukrainians, which took millions of lives in last century. We are Ukrainians. This is why Russia wants us to be killed. But they will never achieve this goal. Ukraine's military victory is the only way to restore respect for international law, the tool to ensure the right of nations for freely to choose their own future, the way to demonstrate that totalitarian regimes are not allowed to attack their neighbors and to do genocide. Ukraine's victory means achieving a strategic goal to ensure the inevitability of punishment for international crimes by Russia Federation and its leadership. I'm so thankful to the US and Western democracy for the military assistance and humanitarian aid. Your weapon is a game changer now in the battlefield, and successful counter-offensive, it's another example how Ukraine armed forces and Ukraine is the most effective recipient of US military assistance. The best way to help Ukraine to win faster is to provide more weapons, impose tougher sanctions, recognize Russian aggression as a genocide, and designate Russia as a state sponsor of terrorism. And also, thank you to the Representative Cohen for his initiative to recognize Russian aggression as a genocide. We all have dreams, big dreams, and responsibility to pursue them. When I was here in April with the T-shirt, Free Taira, I had a dream to see Taira to be released. And now she is sitting today with us. And I have another big dream, one day to visit Moscow, which will have memorials in honor of victims of 2 genocides, Stalin's Holodomor and ongoing aggression. This is why the International Tribunal and reparations to Ukraine are key for international justice. All of this would be a powerful signal to Ukrainians who are still in Russian captivity. We cannot forget our brave warriors of light. Thank you for standing with Ukraine. It's a time to win with Ukraine. Thank you, Senator Cardin, for your leadership, for your many times visiting Ukraine from 2014, and actually conducting here in June also important briefing on decolonizing Russia. I think your commission has very proactive position in developing a strategy towards Russia. Because in 1991, when the Soviet Union was disintegrating, it was defeat of communism, but not a defeat of colonialism. And I think with the victory of Ukraine, we will see that never again totalitarian or authoritarian regimes attacked any sovereign nation. And I'm honored that today Yulia will share her painful experience, and you have this opportunity to listen to her and help my country to win faster. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hopko. Taira, I understand that you will give your remarks in English, but you have a translator because of the language issues. We certainly understand that. You may proceed as you are comfortable. Again, it's an honor to have you before our committee. We admire your leadership in trying to save lives on the battlefield and for the international community to understand exactly what is happening in Russia's aggression. You may proceed.
Dear Senator Cardin, dear Senator Vicker, dear Commission members, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your conducting this hearing and keeping Ukraine in you. Thousands and prayers. My name is Yulia Paievska. My comrades call me Taira. Originally, I am a graphic designer and the president of one of the Ukrainian Aikido Federation. My name is Yulia Paievska. My grandfather was a World War II hero. Now, as my country is at war, I'm a paramedic. My mission is saving life. Russians call me Nazi, like they call everyone, every Ukrainian who fights them or simply doesn't want Russia in Ukraine. The first 20 days of this war I spent in Mariupol, which was hell. After that, I spent 3 months in Russian captivity, which was hell too. I'm not the one to make politician speeches. I'm not a politician. Let me just tell you the stories of which I was witness. Curiosity is one of the reasons along with Hanna, perseverance, excuse me, and confidence in one rightness which allowed me to survive in hell. When my tormentors advised me to commit suicide, I thought, no, I will see that happen tomorrow. I wonder how far they can go in their madness and anger. And then one day, when it seems there was no hope, someone looks into the peephole and calls my name. Get your things and get out. This is how my journey to freedom began. A colossus with a feet of clay is the essence of the Russian empire, pseudo-empire. This was provided by our army, which is driving the enemy out from our land. Thank you for you giving so much to drive them out with, but we need more. I hope you are here not because of curiosity. I hope that you are here in order not to allow this moment to happen. Pregnant prisoners is unknown either to their relatives or to the state. a fighter who was beaten for 3 hours and then thrown into the basement like a sack. And only a day later, someone came to him. A dead child in mother's arms. A 7-year-old boy with bullet wounds dying in my lap because I cannot ward off death in this case. Prisoners in cells screaming for weeks and dying from the torture without any medical help. Dying in the torment of hell, and the only thing they feel before death is abuse and additional beating. My friend's eyes, whose eyes I closed before his body cools down. Another friend, and another. A city of 500,000 people dying before my eyes under the air strikes, methodical planet. Air strikes at hospital, at residential areas. A hospital full of wounded soldiers and civilians. Then the anesthetic drugs have run out. And the antibiotics are about run out too. Surgeons and the entire medical staff sleeping 2-3 hours daily because surgeries are one after another. Medevac cars arriving every 5-10 minutes, where the wounded and the dead are lying on top of each other, and was fate too impossible to understand even if you try. Burning cars with burning people in them. Police officers taken out from under the rubble, the women and children, mutilated beyond recognition after another ceiling. People collecting water from piddles, looted homes, dogs who once were pets, dragging human limbs around the city. Prisoners who are forced to take off their clothes by their killed before they are murdered slowly and with slaughter. Specially equipped torture chambers. The association against the prisoners that are absolutely the same, where the only names changed in the paper, and even the gender of the assessed does not change. No one is trying to prove the investigate. Evidence is obtained simply by using human torture. All these facts, truth is into the area of the Middle Age. I'm a witness. Like other thousands of prisoners, I speak for them. Our soldiers were dying in nearly cells, screaming for 6 days, and one screaming for 6 days. And on the 7th day, his body was placed on a stretcher by his cellmates, and the prison guards took what was left of the soldier. Another one dying from the torture quietly for the 6 days, and only later we learned about his death due to the lack of medical assistance. And this is only a teeny part of what I personally know. Russia is confident of its impunity and the infinity of its propaganda, as well as the infinity of its natural resources. We have a moral right to wage this war. This is not our war. This is a third world war. And until the understanding of these facts become global, Russia keeps rising up against and again, killing its citizens and destroying the world. The sacrifice that my people bring to the altar of freedom is a sacrifice for the whole world, and I know that we will win. But even after our victory, the enemy will recover over time and will again gather forces for aggression, and history will go full circle if nothing is changed. Death, suffering, rivers of blood. Why? Why? Together with Mariupol, they killed their image of noble and invincible warriors. The whole world saw it is an insolent horde without any idea of military honor, no human rights rules, and customs of war are being observed. And this is considered the norm. Why? One of my tortured asked me, "Do you know why I do this to you?" I answered, "Because you can." And he certainly did not expect such an answer. That's right. They do it because they can. Because they were told by their leaders that they have the right to do it. Because at one time it was provided to them. Because the world gave them such an illusion. The world was silent, watching the crimes of the Russians in Georgia, Syria, etc. But the victories of the Ukrainian army in this last week show us that they can't. That their rise of strong is just an illusion. This is Colossus with the feet of clay. The free world community has enough influence to stop this madness. We must start with the issue of prisoners and the fate of civilians in the occupied territories of Ukraine. The issue of prisoners exchange is stick on the reluctance of the Russians of cooperate. As always, they choose the not us strategy. Our prisoners are mostly kept in the territory of the so-called Lugansk and Donetsk People's Republic, and it's convenient for the Russians to transfer our responsibility to the so-called authorities of the so-called republics to avoid retribution. But everyone knows that nothing is done in the occupied territories without order from Moscow, and the handlers from the special service of Russia stand behind each of them. The world needs to insist the facilitating the access of the United Nations and the Red Cross mission to our prisoners, both military and civilian, because none of the humanitarian mission have access to our people who are illegally held in human conditions. The world needs to insist on the participation of the international community and officials in negotiations regarding prisoners, exchange and release. This is currently our main issue, and I'm asking for help in this. But the next ones will appear. The fight against the propaganda of Russian fascist regime, because this is their primary weapon. A fair trial of the war criminals with objective investigation, treatment and psychical support of war victims. We must change the main Moscow narratives because they will deny the people of the whole world the right of life, no more and no less. Victory takes place in the hearts and the minds, which is no less important than the force of the arms. Okay. We have a lot of supports, including our biggest including the biggest one, the people of the United States, who are supporting our fight for survival directly, as well as thousands their representatives in both of chambers of the United States Congress. Using this opportunity, I would like to thank all of you for your strong voice of support in providing historic amounts of security assistance and appropriation bills. Please continue it. Support new supplement budget of 1.7 billion of United States is more or more. Designate Russia as a state sponsor of terrorism. Recognize this aggression as a genocide. Help us to save Ukraine, Europe, and all democratic world. Thank you.
Well, thank you for your courage and for your service to humanity by what you have done in Ukraine and what you continue to do to bring this message to the world community. Your testimony is powerful firsthand testimony. You give a face to the victims. We hear the numbers, but you give us the specifics. And we recognize that every one of those numbers represent a person whose life has been changed forever, has lost his life. You point out that no human rights, rules, or customs of war are being observed. And we never thought that we would see in our lifetime a country pursue a war and observe no rules or boundaries whatsoever. And you point out in your testimony that nothing is done in the occupied territories without orders from Moscow. Mr. Putin's responsible for these actions. You also point out that they have violated international norms. The unprovoked attack on Ukraine violated every condition of the Helsinki Final Act, which is what this commission is about. And then you point out that Russia has violated every international standard and responsibility in regards to conflict. They have targeted civilians. You're before us as a targeted victim, a civilian, a medic trying to save lives. They violated every international norm on treatment of prisoners. Your testimony points that out with specific examples of violating prisoner rights. And you point out that one of Mr. Putin's tools is to use propaganda, false information. The fight against the propaganda of Russia's fascist regime, because this is their primary weapon. I couldn't agree with you more. So I'm going to ask a question that perhaps you've already answered, but I want to understand this. Why were you imprisoned? You were there as a medic to help civilians and help soldiers who were injured. There's international protection for our medics that are there in conflict. Why were you targeted? And why were so many civilians captured and imprisoned? Was part of the military strategy of Russia to target civilians for military action against them, to be imprisoned and tortured, to show the Ukrainian people there would be no mercy to anyone? Is that what you experienced? Why were you apprehended? Why were you put in prison?
Мене затримали, коли перевіряли документи.
I was detained during a document check.
Чому вони затримали мене, я не знаю на 100%, але думаю, що вони перевірили по базі, побачили, що я є парамедик і знаходилась на війні. Для них це вже є злочин.
I cannot say exactly why specifically I was detained, but I understand they checked their records, their database, and they saw that I was a paramedic and present at war. That, in their eyes, was a crime in itself.
Пізніше, під час тортурів, вони намагалися вибити з мене зізнання в тому, що я скоювала якісь злочини, які я, звичайно, не скоювала.
Later, when I was in captivity, I was being tortured, and they tried to make me get a confession, some kind of confession from me about some alleged crimes which I had never committed.
Їх не цікавила правда, їх цікавило, аби я взяла на себе вину того, що я не зробила.
They didn't care to know the truth. They just wanted me to admit guilt for something I had never committed.
Для того, щоб зліпити з мене образ якогось звіра і нав'язати речі, які я навіть уявити собі не могла.
Their intention, their goal was to create an image of some kind of a beast out of me and charge me with things I could not even imagine.
Це було зроблено для того, щоб зробити такий образ ворога і показати його росіянам. Це все направлено для Росії.
All this was targeted at the Russian population to create an image of a horrible enemy and show them this image.
Я думаю, що такі самі дії вони вчиняли і з іншими полоненими також.
I believe they were doing the same with other captive people in captivity.
Тортурами вони намагаються дістати фальшування зізнань в нібито якихось злочинах, які робили люди.
And they use torture in order to falsify those alleged crimes that people would be forced to confess.
І я вже бачила такі шматки з російських пропагандистських програм ТВ, де люди, яких я знаю, зізнаються в злочинах, які вони точно не робили. Я це знаю, напевно.
I have seen footage of Russian propaganda TV programs where shown with people I know in person confessing of things that I know for sure they have never done.
І я добре уявляю, що вони з ними зробили, аби дістати таке відео.
So I can well imagine what they did to those people in order to get those video recordings.
Це все робиться для того, щоб зняти з себе відповідальність.
All this is done in order to release themselves of responsibility.
В цій агресії проти України.
In the aggression against Ukraine.
Зліпити образ якогось безжального ворога.
To produce that image of a merciless enemy.
Наприклад, з мене. Подивіться на мене.
And me as an example, just look at me.
Для того, щоб оправдати свої злочини і своє прагнення заволодіти моєю країною.
In order to justify their crimes and their desire to seize my country.
Це моя персональна думка.
This is my personal opinion. Thank you.
Of course, that violates the Geneva Conventions in so many different ways. Did you have any opportunity for any outside contact? Talk a little bit about what experiences you had as far as being cared for while you were under captivity.
Стосовно допомоги чи піклування під час перебування в полоні. Хтось вам допомагав, піклувався про вас, доглядав?
З самого початку мого затримання я була на той час уже контужена через прильот авіації на госпіталь, чи там міни прилетіли.
At the time when I was detained, I already had a concussion caused by explosion of mines that were shot at the hospital where I was.
У мене сильно боліла голова і були проблеми зі здоров'ям. Я попросила викликати лікаря.
I had a strong headache and other conditions, and I asked to send me a doctor.
Мені сказали, що я на це не заслуговую.
They told me I do not deserve that.
Я попросила зробити телефонний дзвонок, аби повідомити чоловіка, що де я знаходжуся і що зі мною сталося.
I asked to allow me to make a phone call to inform my husband about where I was and what happened to me.
Мені відмовили.
They did not allow that.
І сказали, що ти забагато дивилась американських фільмів. Дзвінка не буде.
They said, you have seen too many American movies. There'll be no phone call.
В мене забрали абсолютно все, що було зі мною, включаючи мої ліки, які я мушу приймати кожен день.
They took away all my belongings, including the medicines that I need to take every day.
У мене нема щитовидної залози.
I have my thyroid removed.
Через це я потребую кожен день отримувати порцію гормонів.
For this reason, I have to take a hormonal medicine every single day.
Замісна терапія.
It's called substitution therapy.
І тільки більше ніж 10 днів десь пройшло, коли я вже 100 разів повторювала, мені повернули ці ліки.
But only after about 10 days, when I kept asking for that every moment, I received my medicines back.
І це було диво, бо вони не були настроєні мені давати будь-що.
And this was really a miracle because the attitude of theirs was not to give me anything, not to allow anything.
Те саме стосується моїх ліків від астми.
The same was with my medicines for asthma.
Вони не давали його мені в руки, вони тримали його десь там. І для того, щоб отримати балончик, мені треба було довго стукати і кликати на, як це називається, охоронця.
They wouldn't let me keep that medicine, and in order to get myself a spray of that can, I would have to knock on the door forever until they would come and let me use it.
Слава Богу, що в мене не дуже часті приступи.
Thank God my aggravated conditions were not happening very often.
Тому що кожен раз, коли я турбувала бідних наглядачів, вони дуже злились.
Because every time I would bother those poor guards, they would get very angry at me.
Розмовляли постійно грубо, для них це норма.
Rude talk to us was the norm, but they felt like it was just a normal thing to do.
У мене відібрали всю одежу, окрім того, що було на мені.
They took away all the clothes I had except those I was wearing.
Я мала одну зміну білизни, то, що було на мені, на протязі цих 3 місяців.
For those 3 months, I only had one set of underwear, the one I was wearing.
Одні джинси.
One pair of jeans.
Одну футболку.
One t-shirt.
Таку кофту.
A little cardigan, sort of.
І шубку.
And a coat.
Вона спасла мені життя, і через неї я не замерзла.
That coat saved my life because it kept me from dying from cold.
Тому що умови утримання просто нелюдські.
The conditions of keeping people in captivity was really inhuman.
Вони мене схопили в березні.
They captured me in March.
Це було дуже холодно.
When it was very cold.
Камера, в якій нас тримали, в різних місцях, але всі камери були без шкла і тільки грати.
All the cells where we were kept in different places, but all of them invariably had no window panes, just the bars on the window.
Було жахливо холодно постійно.
It was always terribly cold.
Нам не давали ані одіял, ані, звичайно, ніяких подушок.
There were no blankets for us and, of course, no pillows.
І матрасів дуже часто не було. Більшу частину часу не було матрасів.
And most of the time, not even a mattress.
І ми спали на нарах, які зроблені з заліза.
So we slept on bunks made of metal.
І це теж свого роду тортури.
That in itself was a kind of torture.
За 3 місяці я милась більш-менш теплою водою, тобто нас водили в душову 1 раз.
In the course of those 3 months, I was only able to wash myself with more or less warm water when they took us to showers once.
Відмовляли в будь-яких передачах.
They refused to receive any packages of supplies of any kind.
Я не маю рідних в місцях, де мене утримували, але дівчата з камер різних також вони не отримували нічого.
In my case, there were no relatives or family to come and bring such packages, but there were other girls in other cells who had family, but they could not receive those packages either.
І я навіть не знаю, чи варто згадувати, але жодної зубної пасти, щітки, про креми можна було взагалі забути, нічого.
And I don't know if I should mention that, but of course, no toothbrushes, no toothpaste, no creams of any kind. No, you can forget about that.
Thank you. Congressman Cohen?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your testimony and your life. When you were arrested, captured in Mariupol, do you believe that they knew who you were and what you had been doing?
Дякую. Я думаю, що вони спершу, коли він побачив мої документи, ну той чоловік в формі міліції ДНР, він ніби щось згадав, тобто здалося, що він чув моє прізвище. Далі він зайшов в приміщення, був там кілька хвилин, повернувся і сказав, що мені треба виходити, і все почалось саме тоді. Тобто або він перевірив якісь списки, або кудись дзвонив.
Well, when the man in uniform of Donetsk Republic Security was checking my ID, he saw my name and he kind of remembered some information he knew, so he left, went inside and stayed there for a few minutes. He was either checking some lists or making a phone call to get, I don't know, orders. And so when he came back, he said, I need to get out of the vehicle. And that's how it all began.
And then when you were taken, I guess, to a prison after that, were you treated differently than the other prisoners, do you believe, because of your past deeds?
Вони ні з ким не поводились чемно.
They did not treat anyone with politeness.
Навіть дівчат, цивільних дівчат, які виглядали абсолютно як звичайні дівчата, вони просто били.
There were some civilian girls, just plain civilian girls, nothing special, and they were beaten.
Просто щоб залякати, я думаю.
Just to scare them, I think that's why they do it.
Але так, до мене ставлення було особливе.
But of course, I did get special treatment.
Мені дуже неприємно згадувати це все.
It's very unpleasant for me to recall all that.
The troops from the, I think it's the Azov Brigade in Mariupol, were some of those individuals in the same prison as you were?
Мене утримували в різних місцях. І так, у всіх у них були хлопці з Азову.
I was kept at different locations, but at each of those locations, yes, there were some guys from the Azov group.
Do you have any reason to know or believe that they were treated differently as well?
Чи відомо вам щось про те, що з ними теж особливо поводились не так, як з іншими?
Так. З ними поводились з особливою жорстокістю.
The Azov prisoners of war were treated with special cruelty.
Також вони чомусь дуже не люблять підрозділ Збройних сил України з назвою Айдар.
For some reason also they have a particular hatred to soldiers from Ukraine's military unit named Aidar.
Вони мені казали, що ці підрозділи визнані у них як терористичні організації, щось таке.
I heard from them something like, in their system, these units are recognized as terroristic organizations.
It's amazing to me that and it has been, that the Russians refer to the Ukrainians as Nazis. But the only behavior that has been similar to Nazis that I've heard of is the behavior of the Russians, particularly in the incarceration prisons that you've experienced and we've heard about.
Excuse me, was this a question, sir?
Not really.
No, you're absolutely right.
Thank you. Thank you. I yield back.
We're joined by Congressman Wilson, who's the ranking Republican member of the Helsinki Commission in the House of Representatives.
Thank you, Co-Chairman Ben Cardin and Co-Chairman Steve Cohen, for holding this somber but important hearing. I appreciate our witness today for her service to those who have endured the worst at the hands of war criminal Putin. Our witness today, veteran and humanitarian Taira Paievska, has provided life-saving medical treatment to hundreds and has documented critical footage of atrocities committed by Putin's murderous thugs since 2014. The civilized world is inspired by the determination of the people of Ukraine. Victory for Ukraine is crucial in the conflict worldwide of democracy, rule of law, being opposed by authoritarians, rule of gun. The world continues to witness unspeakable acts of brutality committed against those captured by Putin's forces, but perhaps most prominent are the images from Mariupol, where Putin's forces bombed a theater sheltering hundreds, and where Ukrainian heroes valiantly held off Russian forces against all odds. It is critical that the world hear the stories of those who endured the worst under captivity and forced relocation. The evidence is essential to prosecution of war crimes when Ukraine repels Putin's forces and achieves victory. Taira, I want to thank you for your service. The world cannot imagine what you've been through, and we thank you for taking the time to speak to the Commission today. One of the most important mandates of the Helsinki Commission is to amplify the plight of victims of human rights abuses. We must continue to champion this cause and release of those currently suffering in captivity. And I now get to a question, and that is, on February 24th, I received a German newspaper which correctly identified this war as a cell phone war. And the significance of that is that Putin atrocities can be exposed as never before. And so with that ability, you certainly made a difference with body cam footage from Mariupol and a devastating account of the suffering caused by Putin. I want to thank you for the footage that you made. I want to thank you for the extraordinary lengths that you've made to get this to the world. With that in mind, are other persons able to use their ability to record and present to the world the truth of what's going on in Ukraine?
So, sir, excuse me, could you rephrase the question?
Yes.
I wasn't sure I caught it.
The question is this. With the ability of cell phones, you can't hide anymore anywhere in the world. In fact, it gives an opportunity in conflict to expose the atrocities right away. And so are other persons in Ukraine using this ability to expose the atrocities so that the world understands the inhumanity of what is being conducted?
Я думаю, що так. Якщо є електрика і якщо є мобільний зв'язок, вони це роблять.
I believe that others are doing this too. If there is electricity, if there is cell phone connection, then they certainly would do it.
Війна є війна, і часто ми не маємо ані електрики, ані зв'язку. Тобто, перше, що вони роблять, вони валять зв'язок.
War is war, and you not always have communication or electricity. That's the first thing the enemy does, ruin communication lines.
But again, thank you for the success you've made of overcoming that. Another question, it's really sad that the world has been subject to disinformation by Putin, and prior to your being captured, had you been subject to disinformation. Additionally, since your release, has there been disinformation provided by Putin and to question your goals and your achievements?
Щоб очорнити те, що ви робили, і ставити під сумнів ваші досягнення, вашу діяльність. Було таке?
Російські пропагандисти зліпили цілий фільм.
Russian propaganda has created a whole film.
Я подивилась, і він, слава Богу, він зроблений погано, і всім видно, що це просто поділка.
I watched this film and it's obvious how fake it is.
Але для росіян це достатньо для того, щоб звинувачувати, наприклад, мене.
However, it is sufficient for the Russians to blame me for bad things.
Мене особисто це дуже дратує через те, що все своє життя, всю свою діяльність на фронті я присвятила допомозі.
Personally, I feel very irritated about it because all my life, all the time I spent in the war zone, I dedicated to helping people.
Я відмовляла собі в багатьох речах для того, щоб допомагати військовим і цивільним на лінії зіткнення.
I refused myself many things in order to be able to do more and provide more for the military servicemen and civilians in need.
Але їх цікавить брехня, щоб обілити свої преступні дії.
But their interest is in lies in order to remove blame from themselves.
І, звичайно, мені сумно.
I feel sad about it.
Але нічого, аби тільки правда була, отримала перемогу, аби ми перемогли.
But as long as truth prevails, that will bring our victory.
And a final question. War criminal Putin unintentionally has unified Democrats and Republicans in the United States. He has unified NATO as never before, with now Finland and Sweden joining NATO, with an 830-mile border with the Russian Federation, and also to encourage countries like Germany and Italy to achieve the 2% of defense spending. Additionally, he has unified the European Union, and unprecedented, the European Union is providing aid to the people of Ukraine as never before. With that in mind, what more can people in the world do to assist the people of Ukraine achieve victory?
Я думаю, дуже важливо проводити розслідування злочинів російського режиму фашистського.
I think it is very important to conduct investigations of the crimes of the Russian fascist regime.
Аби викрити всю їх брехню і підступні наміри.
In order to reveal the lies and their treachery.
І покласти край і цій агресії, і агресії, які планують вони на майбутнє.
So that we put an end to this aggression and to all future intentions of such aggression.
Тому що абсолютно очевидно, що в разі перемоги над Україною вони планували йти далі в Європу.
It is very obvious that if they achieved victory in Ukraine, they were planning to move on further into Europe.
Збирання доказів.
So collecting evidence.
Визнання Росії спонсором тероризму.
Recognition of Russia as a sponsor of terrorism.
Зміцнення, посилення санкцій.
Strengthening of sanctions.
І дійсно світ мусить об'єднатись, бо ми маємо проблему, якої не ставало перед людством з часів Другої світової.
And as you rightly pointed out, the world has to come together, has to unite, because we are dealing here with a problem we have never had in the world since World War II.
Також ми ще потребуємо, вибачте нас, ми дуже вдячні за те, що ви нам даєте, але для того, аби розвинути наші успіхи, нам потрібна ще зброя.
And then again, we need more I apologize for saying this again. We are very thankful for everything you've given us already, but in order to develop the military success, we need more weapons.
Ви бачите, ваша зброя в надійних руках. Ми вправно її користуємось і не використовуємо проти цивільних і невинних людей.
You can see that your arms, your weapons are in good hands. We are using it properly. We are not using it against civilians or for anything bad.
Україна веде війну гонорово.
Ukraine is fighting the war with honor.
І також ми потребуємо системи ПВО.
And one thing we need in part is anti-aircraft defense systems.
Через те, що обстріли зараз стають сильніші, вони не можуть нас здолати на землі, вони хочуть нас роздовбати з повітря.
Because they are failing to defeat us in land warfare, they are trying to destroy us with airstrikes.
І якби ця мова йшла про армію, це було б ще півбіди.
And this is not only about the military, which would be bad, but not half as bad.
Але вони атакують об'єкти критичної інфраструктури.
But they are making strikes at critical infrastructure facilities.
І дуже радіють з цього.
And they rejoice from that.
Просимо про додаткові способи прикриття ПВО.
So we are asking for additional resources, air defense resources.
Але, як я вже казала, перемога робиться в головах і в серцях.
But like I said before, victory is achieved in the minds and hearts.
На рівні з силою зброї.
Along with the strength of the power of weapons.
Це те, в що я свято вірю.
I firmly believe in this.
І прошу саме протистояти пропаганді.
And so I'm asking to stand together against that propaganda influence.
Росія, як послідовниця Совєтського Союзу, має дуже старі традиції в цьому плані.
Russia has inherited the old traditions of the Soviet Union in that respect.
Традиції пропаганди.
The traditions of that kind of propaganda.
Я просила, аби цим спеціально зайнялись люди, які би вивчили це питання, бо вплив на росіян і жителів окупованих територій цієї пропаганди просто жахливий.
I would suggest that more work is done by specialists on that issue, how Russian propaganda impacts the minds of the Russian people as well as people in the occupied territories. It's terrible impact.
Але, звичайно, без зброї все це не буде мати ніякого сенсу.
That said, without weapons, all that will have no meaning.
Дякую.
Thank you.
And as I conclude, I agree with you that indeed the dictator Lukashenko, by accident, revealed, indeed, the aggression was going to not stop in Ukraine. It would go to Moldova. We know that it would then proceed to Georgia. We know this would give encouragement to the CCP, Chinese Communist Party, to go after Taiwan. We know that Tehran, we want to fulfill their goal of vaporization of the people of Israel and vaporization of the people of the United States. And so your success is crucial to all of us, and we've got great leadership with Senator Ben Cardin. Thank you.
Well, again, I want to thank our witnesses. The Helsinki Commission, the U.S. Helsinki Commission, since the days of the Soviet Union, has been a voice for those who have been victimized by oppression. I want to thank Dr. Hopko again for bringing your case to our attention. We think that is the only way that we can be the advocates for those who are imprisoned and whose human rights have been abridged is by putting a spotlight on it. So this is an open invitation. If you have information about other individuals that may be in a similar circumstance that you were in, that we might be able to use our megaphone here to amplify their cause, please feel comfortable to get that information to our staff We will certainly never want to put anyone in greater jeopardy, but we do think that putting a spotlight is important so that the oppressors know they're being watched and knowing that we're taking action to try to help them. So that's an open invitation from this commission. At any time, if you have additional information about individuals that we might be helpful in raising their concerns, because we are concerned about every individual who's been victimized, and we want to help those individuals. And when putting a face on it, it helps us get the international community more unified and energized to stop these atrocities and to do exactly what you're saying, to provide the wherewithal so that the Ukrainians can defend their sovereignty and win this war of aggression against Russia, but also to hold the perpetrators accountable for their atrocities. And your providing information to us certainly helps us, and your testimonies today before this commission is a major step forward. And once again, we thank you for being here. We thank you for your courage. We thank you for saving lives. And we thank you for what you're doing on behalf of the Ukrainian people, and as Mr. Wilson said, on behalf of all of us that feel threatened by Mr. Putin's asymmetric arsenal trying to bring down our democratic systems of government. With that, the commission will stand adjourned. Thank you.